Welcome to the Dairy Good Dawgs. This is a brand new podcast brought to you by the University of Georgia and led by your hosts, Jillian Bohlen and Sophie Dupont. This is a place where we will talk everything from the barn to the arch and where conversations are all things dairy, the people, the science, and the stories behind the cows. As a new podcast, we are starting off with an episode on people. I'm talking with Sophie Dupont, my co-host, a graduate student in dairy science here at the University of Georgia. Many of our students don't come from farm backgrounds, but they bring new perspectives, energy, and ideas that can help shape the future of this industry. We'll talk about what draws someone like Sophie to dairy, the challenges they face stepping into this world, and what they see ahead for themselves and ultimately for the industry in the years to come. Welcome to the podcast, Sophie.
Hi, Dr. Bohlen. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so very much looking forward to this conversation because I think it's going to give us some really unique insight and perspective for the industry to kind of hear from students that are maybe interested in this industry, but maybe don't really know how to break ground to get into it. So I think this will be probably one of many podcast episodes that will be dedicated to the students of dairy science, as well as getting to know them and having conversations on how we can get them involved in this industry. So to start us off, I really want to talk about your background. So what's your story and how did you find your way, not only to UGA, but more specifically into the field of dairy?
Yeah, so I grew up in Metro Atlanta. I don't come from an agricultural background. I think the closest I get is the family farm that my grandmother had in Minnesota. I believe they had a singular milk cow. So when looking at colleges, I was just looking at good schools all throughout the U.S. I ultimately decided on UGA because of the scholarships they were offering, the fantastic programs we have, and honestly because in-state tuition is really hard to beat. In high school, I was involved in sports and the arts, and I found psychology to be fascinating. So I came into UGA through the Franklin College of Arts and Sciences as a psychology major. When I found out that that wasn't what I wanted to do, midway through my freshman year, I thought, well, what are my other interests? And animals has always been something I've been passionate about. So I transferred to the College of Ag and thought that maybe I'd become a vet. But I decided to take a bunch of classes to explore my opportunities. And one of those classes was a horseback riding class. There I met one of my really good friends now. She was a dairy science student and said that the UGA Teaching Dairy was hiring. So I applied, I got accepted, and I started working at the dairy. I remember my first week, heifer was being born, and I got to pull a calf, and I think that was the moment that solidified everything for me. The people out there were fantastic, and all of them were in Dairy Science Club, and so they got me to join, and they became my friend group. I really didn't have a solidified friend group in college until then, and we're all friends to this day, so they really are my UGA family.
Wow, that's a fascinating story. And it's also very interesting how it can be just one small experience that'll totally change the course of your path. And this happen chance meeting with a fellow student really guided your path to where you're at today. It sounds like perhaps the University of Georgia Teaching Dairy, along with that student, played a role in interesting you in dairy. Is that a fair statement to make?
Oh, absolutely. The atmosphere of the UGA Teaching Dairy, as well as the managers and the students who work out there, really drew me in and created my love and foundational knowledge of the industry. It definitely took me a couple weeks to learn the correct procedures for milking and calf feeding, but once I had gotten those down to muscle memory, I got to learn more specialized skills, at least for the students, like driving a tractor or drying off a cow.
Yeah, I mean, that had to be a pretty tricky experience, not really coming from a farm or agricultural background to then step on to the UGA Teaching Dairy, a dairy that operates just like any other dairy farm, which has a lot of tasks and very steep learning curves. So not growing up on the farm, how has that really shaped your perspective or your approach to learning about dairy?
Well, I think it's given me such an interesting perspective because I really relate to the insiders and the outsiders in this field. I've learned how a dairy operates and what it takes to manage a dairy well, but I also approach things with humility and curiosity because I didn't grow up in the industry, and so I understand what it's like to not understand the management practices and the intricacies that go on with managing a dairy, and to really get stuck in the misinformation that exists out in the world. So I have really intentionally learned skills and asked a bunch of questions to my professors and the producers I've met to make sure that I'm getting all perspectives of what it's like to not only run a dairy, but also those who operate in the sort of allied industries within the dairy industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. I didn't come from a dairy background. It's difficult. You have to figure out the lingo, the work, as well as the people, right? So, speaking to some of that, what have you found to be some of the biggest challenges or maybe even surprises as you've gotten more involved and really try to integrate into this industry?
I think one of the biggest challenges is just feeling like I belong, which sounds so silly, but I have such a yearning to have grown up in the industry. I wish I had been able to do 4-H and dairy showing and quiz bowl as a kid, or have a family who operated a dairy. So part of the challenge, I think, is just feeling like an outsider. There's been fantastic producers and people in the industry who have really welcomed me, and people such as yourself who have taught me a lot about this industry. But what has really surprised me is just how much it takes to operate a dairy, how many moving parts there are, and how many different sectors have to work together in harmony to create a successful dairy farm. And the knowledge, the critical thinking, the skill, and the effort that goes into the everyday operations.
Yeah, that's some really great insight there. And you're right. We do hear this from a lot of students that it's really hard to feel like you fit, or where do you fit is maybe the better question when you don't come from an ag background, or more specifically a dairy background. So as I think about that and I think about the conversation you just had, what are your thoughts on what we could do, whether that's at the university level or at the industry level, to help students like you without a background feel more comfortable and at home in this industry?
Well, I think the first part of that does start on a university level or in an agricultural classroom level, is just providing hands-on opportunities or training programs where people can learn these skills and actually have on-farm experience. Because I think it's one thing to learn the information in a classroom setting or in a lecture setting. That's helpful for background knowledge, but experiencing the farm, experiencing the hard work that goes into it is a whole nother beast. I think also mentorship opportunities for students to connect with producers or industry professionals that can guide them is really vital. And finally, emphasizing the wide variety of job opportunities that are in this industry. It has surprised me and amazed me how many different sectors you can get involved in within the dairy industry.
Yeah, absolutely. We could always do a better job of that. And so, Sophie, I know that you're now in graduate school, so you've had a chance to kind of learn and develop through undergraduate. Now in graduate, you're beginning to maybe hone down a little bit of what you want to do or how you want to contribute, maybe to agriculture on the broad scale, or more specifically to the dairy industry. Where do you think you're really headed right now in your future?
That's a great question, Dr. Bohlen. I think it's been hard to hone that in because I have so many interests and I so deeply care about this industry. But I'm really interested in working with people and using the cow as an animal model to do so. I love working on farm. I've had fantastic opportunities working on a goat dairy or the UGA teaching dairy and several other farms. But I see myself on more of the communications part of this industry because I do think I have a unique perspective when it comes to communicating with those in this industry, as well as those who are consumers and not part of the intricacies and inner workings of the dairy industry.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you are a very good communicator, even talking here off the cuff on some of these questions. So as we kind of wrap it up with our conversation for today, and we'll probably follow up with you sometime in the future. So kind of closing us out here, if you could share one message with dairy producers about today's generation of students entering this field or wanting to enter this field, what do you think that'd be?
That's a great question. I think my message would be that the students today have passion and we're interested. We want to be part of this industry's future. And we're looking forward to the technological innovations. We're looking forward to hopefully bettering this industry in some way, while also keeping in mind that we have a deep appreciation for the traditions and practices that built this industry. I just want to round out that statement with the fact that we respect our producers. We so respect how much effort goes into operating a dairy farm. It is not only their business, but it's a lifestyle. It's possibly family history. And especially for those of us who didn't grow up on a farm, I am so proud to be part of the dairy industry. So I think the students of today can really appreciate where producers have come from and also where we're going as an industry.
Yeah, that was a really good way to close out this conversation with some encouragement, some passion, and look into the future on how our students are going to work within this industry. Because I'm going to say they are going to work within this industry because I'm positive in that belief. So everyone, that was Sophie Dupont, a graduate student in dairy science at UGA, sharing her journey into the dairy industry. I think conversations like this remind us that the future of the dairy industry doesn't just depend on the cows. It depends on the people we invite in, mentor, and encourage along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who cares about building the next generation of dairy professionals. Thank you for joining us. Tune in next time for more from the Dairy Good Dawgs, because every great glass of milk starts with great people.